Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Awaken to Your Soul Path. I am your host, Barbara, and today I'm joined by the wonderful Caroline Ferguson. And we are going to be talking about the Wiggly path to something more. And I've been looking forward to this because it is a wiggly path, right? Finding your something more, first determining what your something more is looking like, and then actually reaching it. Those are some stages in the journey. So, thank you so much for talking about your path today on our show, Caroline.
Thank you very much. And you put it so well. It's the wiggly path to your something more, and each of us has that. So I'm delighted to be here. We've known each other on and off for a number of years as part of the highly sensitive community. And I'm just absolutely thrilled to be here to have a chat with you.
I
So
am
thank
so
you.
happy. And you are correct. And so I think that this is a common theme, I would say, for highly sensitive people, empath people, people who identify as a black sheep, rebel, trailblazer, maybe even misfit, the ones that are just a little bit or a lot different than most other people in society. And it starts off, I think, similar to other people, where you're trying to follow the rules, trying to be the good girl, the good guy,
Mhm.
doing what is expecting of you, trying to fit in, trying to belong. And then you reach that point where you have to sort of admit to yourself it's not working.
Mhm. Yes. And in my case, admit to myself over and over again, it's not working.
Yes. That's the wiggly part, right? Where you
That's the wiggly part.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And I know at some point we're going to have a wonderful conversation at another time about sensitivity and about what I call being a sensitive upstart.
Mm.
So I won't go into too much of that here, but it's all relevant. It's all relevant to everything. So no, I'm just excited to be having this conversation with you and talking about things I love. I love to have conversations about.
Yes.
So thanks again.
I think it's very important to talk about these things because, like I said, it's sort of like the theme for people like you and me. And I don't know about you, but when I was going through all of this, especially in the beginning, I seriously thought there was something wrong with me.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. You feel the word I use is other. You just feel other
Hmm.
than other people. Um, and certainly when I was growing up, there was always this feeling. I call it the itch. There was always this knowing, this itch that there was going to be something more, that there was something more I was supposed to be doing or I was supposed to be being. And for a long time, the longest time, I thought that that something more was about writing. It's about being an
Hmm.
author because I've always written all my life. I've always loved doing that and telling stories and writing poetry and songs and all the rest of it. And I thought that by something more, I would understand that I'd got there, that I'd arrived when I became a paid, for some reason, published, acknowledged, recognized writer. So it
Hmm.
wasn't enough that I was just doing it in my room or, doing it for my hobby. It had to be this recognition. And that's the meaning that I'd attach to that feeling, that itch that I had that there needed, there must be something more than
Hmm.
I'm supposed to be doing or being. Um, and what was really interesting was that, Wiggly Path, definitely, I tried lots of different things and they would work for a while, but then be like, no, that feeling is still there, that itch is still there. So I fixated on this. It's about writing. So I kind of created a working life for myself that allowed me to take, I do a contract for 6 months, then I take 6 months off to write. And and I kind of was getting closer to my goal of being a produced screenwriter or a published author. And then I found myself there. I got offered a job as an in-house screenwriter for a film production company in London. And I thought, that's it. I'm there. I've arrived.
Yeah.
And the itch was louder than ever. It
Mm.
was still there. So for years, I've been trying all these different things, wiggling along my path. And I got to the destination that I had decided was, the arrival point. And
Yeah.
it wasn't at all. I'd closed my mind to other opportunities. So then I started on a quest, find my something more. And a lot of what I do with my mindset training clients is that I actually show them my process and how I arrived at that. So I can say with confidence that I got there, and it was everything I thought it would be and hoped it would be. And the main thing, the main symptom, the main reason I know is because the itch went away. That
Mhm.
feeling, that nagging feeling that had been there for so long, there needs to be, there is, I know there is something more that I'm
Mhm.
meant to do or I'm meant to be. And that itch has been quiet now for nearly 15 years, which is, was a huge relief and a huge source of joy and constant joy. And it evolves, but, I am there, and we can talk more about that during this conversation.
I would love that. And I recognize what you're saying. I always felt like there needs to be something more even, right?
Mm.
Because if this is it, I don't know if I want to continue this way.
Yeah.
That was also something that I was feeling. And when you then sort of try to talk to other people about it, most people look at you like you're going crazy. They don't recognize it at all. So I felt very alone
Mm.
in this searching for the something more, and people have judgments about it. And it's like, oh, you change your job like you change your dress, or every year you have a new job, and are you still working in the same because you like to change your job, right? All of these things that people say to you, and that makes you feel like I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah, yeah, and you feel sort of substandard in some way.
Yeah.
You're just not quite enough. Um, and yeah, so that was certainly the case with me. And I used to sort of leap from thing to thing and testing and trying. And there were certain parts of everything that were resonating, that were chiming, but the whole thing wasn't really happening. And it wasn't a comfortable feeling to live with, because I had this real sense of time running out of, I was growing up, I was becoming older, I was moving through those years, and there was this clock ticking, this feeling of time running out. And that has quietened an awful lot. It's still there a little bit, but
Hmm.
it's quietened down a huge amount. And again, that's quite a relief, because then you can focus on the moment that you're in
Hmm.
rather than worrying about all the moments that are draining away. You can actually, live in a much more mindful way and honor the moment that, because, we're all on this timeline. We have this little moving part on the timeline, which is now, which is the day, the moment, the second that we're living in. But we're all so busy thinking about what's happened or thinking about what might happen that we miss it. And it's this eyelash thin slice of time that is now. And we spend our whole lives in that slice of time thinking about before and thinking about after and worrying about this and that. And I'm much more inclined now to be in the eyelash of time,
Hmm.
to be living in it, because that creates a better past, and it is a springboard to a better way of living in the future. So it's, just by paying attention, by honoring that moment, that infinitesimal, and of course it's already gone, it's already past, but that's what it took me a long time to learn, that I don't need to be looking ahead or looking back. I need to be looking into where I am and expanding that and enjoying that. And that just made the most enormous difference as well.
I love that you're saying that because it's absolutely true. That's also the conclusion that I've reached. Eh? Lots of people are either stuck in, I should have done that. I
Yeah.
should have chosen this. What if I had done that instead of this? What if I
Yes.
never married that guy? What if I never? So a lot of what if, what if, what if.
Yes.
But
Yes.
the past is set in stone. You cannot change
Mm.
it. So you can think about it. You can waste tremendous amount of time, energy on it, but it doesn't change anything. So it's sort of
Mhm.
a waste of time, if I'm being
Mm.
honest.
Yeah.
And then there is indeed the large group of people that look to the future. Also, what ifs? What if I make the wrong choice? What
Mm.
if what I want will never happen for me? What if
Mm.
I need to go back to working for a boss because I cannot make my business successful? What if
Mm.
I lose my house and I lose everything and I have no place to go? All of
Mm.
these fears about
Mm.
what ifs in the future. And what I've learned is that the time is so incredibly flexible. We always think that, you talked about a timeline, that a timeline is fixed, that it always goes in a certain direction, but that is not true. A
Mm,
timeline is very fluid, and there are
mm,
many, many different options for the next moment, even. And it's not said that it will be one specific thing, but the more you are worried and scared for one specific thing, the
mhm.
bigger the chance of that specific thing actually happening. So that is also not in your best interest. But there are
Sure, absolutely.
so many misconceptions. People are often raised with the belief that they need to work really hard for what they have.
Mm,
And that working really hard also takes away the joy of enjoying the now moment, right?
mhm. Yeah, I think we have to. It's not something that comes naturally to us in the kind of life that we lead now, because there is no downtime. Any downtime is spent looking at your phone or you know, your to-do list or whatever it is. And I think we have to consciously make the effort to stop. Power of the pause, is to stop and be okay with nothingness. And when we can start to do that and to treat now as as an empty space that we can explore. It's not empty at all, but to not have to fill every single second. I read something the other day that we now, our attention span now, on average, the human attention span is 9 seconds before
Wow.
we have another thought, before there's another thing that comes in. A goldfish has 11. So we've now got to the point where we have a lower attention span than a goldfish. And that's how we are training our children to be. And it's since this thing came into our lives, we have lost the power of contemplation um, and slowness and allowing ourselves to just inhabit each day as it comes, which
Yeah.
used to be how people lived. They didn't live in such a comfortable way that some of us are lucky enough to do. Um, and it was about survival. A lot of it was about survival. And now, I mean, if we are lucky enough to live, in the West and in a first world country, it's not about survival. It's about time and how we fill it.
Yes.
And and so many people don't realize you have a choice about that. And it's not just a choice about how you physically fill your time, it's a choice about how you mentally and emotionally and spiritually inhabit your time, live in your time. And that has been such a revelation to me that I get the choice about how I do that. And you're absolutely right. It expands time, and then we become the creators of time and we own our time. Whereas so many of us, I think, have felt, certainly I have, at the mercy of the ticking clock. Now I choose not not to live in that way. And it took a determined effort because we have to rewire those neural circuits. That we've got those concrete pathways in our brain, but this wonderful neuroplasticity that our brains have, we can rewire it. And it
Yes.
just takes two things. It takes repetition, reminding ourselves over and over again, I choose this. This is the specific thing I choose. And then choosing to have an emotional response to it, which is I choose to be excited about it. I choose to feel peaceful about it. I choose to feel that I want this, that this is success for me.
Yeah.
And if we do that thing, if we just, whatever it is we want to do, if we just do the conscious repetition of what is this thing that I want to be doing? Right, it's this, name it, and then sit within the feeling of pleasure. Because when we attach pleasure to a repeated action, we get a stronger habit.
Yes.
And it doesn't take long to have little prompts. So for example, there was a point where I was slouching a lot, so I put little red dots on my computer and in various places, and every time I saw a red dot, it was like, okay, straighten up. And it's subliminally almost, kind of goes in, but you need to be conscious about it too. It needs to be deliberate when you want to change that. And how we inhabit time is such an ingrained habit because we're constantly chasing time, we're constantly catching up, that actually we can stop and do it differently.
There are also, I think, lots of beliefs that are at play in this, because this is
Oh,
a
definitely.
major theme in the clients that I see, and especially when you feel like there's lack in your life. There's not enough in your life. There's
Mhm.
not enough to pay the bills. Your business is not doing well enough to pay the bills, and you feel like you need to work harder to change that.
Mhm.
What I see a lot of people struggling with is I cannot do nothing. I cannot just enjoy doing nothing. I cannot take a day off and sit with my book in the sunshine because the sun is shining and I just want to enjoy myself, because then that doesn't fix the problem of not having enough income. It doesn't
Absolutely.
fix the problem of my business not going the way I want. Belief systems.
Oh, completely. And the most toxic beliefs that we have are the must-based beliefs. And that's, should, ought to, got to, have to, need to. And often we'll use those words like, I've got to go shopping. That's not a big must. That's a right, I need to get some food. That's a practical, bit of language. I need to go shopping. We know when we have a must or a should or a ought to or a got to that is toxic to us because it changes how we feel. And when we have a must, I must not sit in the sun. So you're saying I can't sit in the sun and read my book. It's actually, I must not. I must not sit in the sun and read my book. And the thing is that where there's a must or a should or an ought to or a have to, there's an or else. I must not sit in the sun and read my book, or else it
Mhm.
means that the rest of my life is chaotic. And it means that, that life is difficult and dangerous and but the big problem with the or else is that one of them is or else I'm not good enough, or
Mhm.
else I'm lazy,
Or
or
else
else I'm
people.
being idle, or else I'm avoiding my life. And that's subliminal. So as soon as we have any idea, I must or I must not do that, there's an or else it's this, or else it's bad, or else I can't handle it, or else I'm a bad person, or else I'm inadequate in some way, or else it makes life difficult. And we don't hear those consciously. We don't hear them. So one of the things that, well, I think it's the greatest life skill we can learn is self-awareness.
Yes.
Um, Knowing ourselves in depth, because if we're having 20 to 70,000 thoughts a day, the majority of us, and we can't hear them, that soundtrack, that script is running our lives, is determining how we feel, it's determining how we behave, and it's all unconscious. So the key thing really is to be able to tune in and ask yourself, what's the story I'm telling myself about this situation that is leading me to feel like this? Let's
Yeah.
take responsibility for how we feel, because the stories we're telling ourselves are driving how we feel.
Yes, and it's not just the stories we're telling ourselves, it's the stories that we learned to tell ourselves, because it's the
Absolutely.
same stories that our parents are
Yeah.
telling ourselves, or our aunts, uncles, teachers, anybody in a position of
Yes.
influence when we were younger.
Absolutely, because a lot of the voices in our head are not ours.
No?
They're voices that we inherited. They're ones that we picked up and that we've hung on to. And the magnificent thing about being an adult and being a self-aware adult and having somebody that can support you and help you with this is that we can change the voices. We can learn to tune out the ones that are not helpful, and we can learn to amplify our own voice of, soul voice to really understand in a purposeful way what we're here for and what our
Hmm.
something more is, and giving ourselves full permission. That's the other important piece, as well as self-awareness and being able to hear and challenge and change the stories, is giving ourselves full permission to take action,
Yes.
to do this work, and to find our joy. and
Yes.
and that does require us to give ourselves unfettered permission, to
Yes,
take all the
that's the
brakes off.
first. Awareness, I think, is the first step, and then indeed
Mm,
giving yourself permission to just enjoy your life, whatever that looks like.
yeah, yeah.
And we are so stuck in struggle, hardship, having to work hard, all of these beliefs that are basically keeping us where we don't want to be, that it's very difficult to let that go. But and you said something earlier that I want to sort of revisit a little bit, and that's the
Mm,
neuroplasticity. And for
mm,
those of you who do not know what that means, it just basically means that you can rewire your brain. You can
Yes.
create new neural pathways. And so your first response to, oh, just take the day off and go lie in the sun with your book would be, oh my God, no, because I have all of these things to do. That is a pathway, a neural pathway in your brain. You hear something, that is your auto response to it. But you have the power to change that, to rewrite that, and to think, well, that actually does sound really good. It's been a while since I took some time for myself, and well, I'm not really progressing the way I would like to right now. So yeah, why not? Why not take the day off and just enjoy myself for a change? Oh, that sounds really,
Absolutely.
really wonderful. Yeah, I'm going to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah. And it's that ability to challenge and then deliberately change your response that is so powerful. And so many people feel they don't have a choice. This is just how I am.
Hmm.
No, this is how you've been. So there's this, I talk about the slightly rude word here, but the bullshit fairy that, sits on your shoulder
Hmm.
and tells you you're wrong, or it's there to save your life. The bullshit fairy's job is to try and keep you safe and save your life, but it's not always a very constructive way of going about things because it's got the voice of a teacher or a parent or a
Yes.
so-called friend or whatever. It's quite a critical voice. So learning to hear, to detect your bullshit fairy when it's kind of coming in is a useful thing to be able to do.
Yes.
Um, and I started on that story with a purpose, and I've just got completely tangled up. So no doubt we'll come back to it. But yeah,
Yes.
the bullshit fairy. So get to know your bullshit fairy and be able to hear it, and then you can say to your little fairy, "Look, I hear you, but actually, you're wrong. Today you're wrong. So let's just rewind that and give ourselves permission, and you can be quiet. And I appreciate your efforts, but that's not the way I want to go about things anymore." So, oh yes. So, I remember what I was going to say. So the bullshit fairy, one of the reasons that affirmations don't work for a lot of people. So I know we're jumping around a bit, we're wiggling. But one of the reasons that affirmations, these positive statements that you repeat to yourself. I had a tutor that would say, "I'm healthy, wealthy, slender, and wise." And she'd been saying this affirmation for 20 years. And she wasn't anything except wise, really.
Yeah.
Um, and part of the problem is that when we're talking about affirmations, we are talking about a life state that we're not currently in. So we're in this current life state down here, and we want to be in this life state up there. So we use the language, and we might use the tonality and the energy, but the bullshit fairy is going bullshit.
Yeah.
That's just,
Not
you're
believing
not
it.
healthy,
It's not
slanty.
true.
Yeah, exactly. It's just bullshit. So it's not going to work.
Yes.
But one way that we can get around the bullshit fairy is, so when somebody says to me, "That's the way I've always been," there's a wonderful little technique that you can use here. If your mind does not believe that you are capable of change or that life is capable of being different for you, try this. So it's called past, present, and future. So, first of all, you say, "Up to now, this is how it's been." So you acknowledge, yeah, it's not been great. I've not been eating well. I've been in poor habits. I've been attached to my phone. I've been triggered to have these destructive conversations with this particular person in this relationship. Okay, yeah, I acknowledge. So you're acknowledging this is how it's been. This has been the reality. And then you say, "But now I am becoming," and those are the powerful words, "I am becoming someone who wants to change that and believes that it's possible to change that. And in the future, I will become someone who is capable of being there in that place up there." So rather than having this leap from now to up there, which your mind, your bullshit fairy goes,
Uh-uh.
it's that bit,
Mhm.
can't do that bit. You're saying, "Okay, I acknowledge where we are. And this has been the reality of how it has been in the past.
Mhm.
But now I am becoming someone who can think differently about this and who wants different things about this. And in the future, I will become that person who lives it." So
I
it's
love
this really beautiful little technique. And the bullshit fairy can't bullshit you out of that because you're acknowledging where you are. You're accepting the reality of who and where you are right now. But you are challenging yourself to say, I am capable of thinking about this in a different way.
Mhm.
And in the future, I am that person.
Wow.
So it gets past the bullshit fairy. And another useful thing to do regarding affirmations, I don't use them because they don't work for me because my bullshit fairy is very noisy.
I don't use them either. They've never
Yeah.
worked for me either.
There's another thing, and I wish it was a different name, but they're called afformations. Instead of affirmations with an I, it's afformations with an O, which is, I think, a terrible name. But it was the guy who promotes these is a chap called Noah St. John. And I was doing it without realizing that it was kind of a thing.
Hmm.
And the way you do it is you ask it as a question instead of delivering it as a statement. So instead of saying, I am healthy, wealthy, slender, and wise, which my teacher used to say, you say, why am I healthy, wealthy, slender, and wise? And that gets past the bullshit fairy as well, because you're not saying that's what I am. You're
Mhm.
saying, why am I like that? And your mind, when you ask yourself a question, you move into prefrontal cortex here, the executive functioning, what I call the dragon mindset, which is the source of your wisdom and your creativity. And your mind wants to answer that question. Well, it's because I'm eating properly. It's because I'm taking regular exercise. It's because I'm focusing on how my money comes in. It's
Mhm.
because I spend time working on my inner wisdom. So your mind is coming up with answers
Mhm.
to the question that you've asked, and your mind will give you, when you start using this prompt, frequently. And a healthy, wealthy, slender, and wise is never something I would advocate that people do as an
Mhm.
affirmation or affirmation. There's too much in there. But for example, it's if you want to, let's take a really simple habit like drinking more water. If you don't enjoy water, um, and your affirmation is, I drink more water for healthy hydration, which makes me feel fantastic. It's why do I drink more water for healthy hydration that makes me feel fantastic? Well, it's because I know that my cells can process waste more effectively. It's because I know that actually it will freshen my mouth and my breath and how that feels. And I know it's because it makes my body feel so much better. And what's happening when you're providing those answers is you're providing your mind with the evidence it needs to take that action,
Yeah.
because we need evidence, we need proof.
Yeah.
And when we have an affirmation that's from here to here, we haven't got proof. We've got proof of down here. We
Mhm.
haven't got proof of up there. So when we ask the question and our mind comes up with, unfiltered, unbiased answers, that's proof. Okay. All right, because this, because that, because that. And you start to chip away at the resistance without even consciously doing it.
Yes.
You know,
I
it's
use a similar
opening.
technique, but with
Yeah.
a different type of question. So, what I've been taught is to ask, what would it feel like to drink
Yes.
more water every day? What would it
Yes.
feel like to live in my dream house? What would it feel like to have a healthy bank account? What would it feel like? And
Yeah.
whatever you want, because that also asks a question that needs to be answered, and you're going into the feeling space, which usually also
Absolutely.
triggers the right type of vibration, because then you sort of start daydreaming. Daydreaming has
Yes,
gotten a bad rap, but I think daydreaming is excellent. If you
it
start
is.
dreaming about your desires and what your life would look like if they were in your life, what you would feel like, what you would be doing, what you would be eating, all of these things, they help form a picture that vibrates at the right type of energy that you would want to attract, making it a lot easier to actually come into your life.
It's a lovely question. And what you're talking about really is what it does is it sparks our imagination. And
Yes.
our imagination, that's what daydreaming is. It's imagining. And our imagination is the most powerful force in the universe, I believe. It's just an extraordinary thing that we can, out of random sparks of prompts and bits of appetite, we can imagine something into being that didn't exist before.
Mhm.
It's incredibly powerful, and consciously using that power through questions is brilliant. And I love your question because it gets us on a sensory level. What would it feel like emotionally What would it feel like physically? What would it smell like? What would it look like? Who would I be with? What color would it be? All of those questions, it brings something to vivid life. And once we've imagined it, once that thought has become a thing in our head,
Yeah.
it's like a future memory.
Yes.
It's like we're creating a memory of something that hasn't happened yet that can start to feel natural and normal and a kind of concrete part of our destination. So
Yes.
this whole idea of creating memories about things that haven't even happened is again a really powerful way we can use our minds.
Yes, and what I've seen is some people, they have lost connection with their dream. They
Yeah.
don't know what it would look like or with whom they would be or what they would be doing. They've lost connection with that. But they are still very much able to tune into the feeling. I have no clue what I actually want, but when I have what I actually want, I will be on top of the world. I will be extremely happy. I will be extremely grateful. I will feel very relaxed. I will feel very inspired. I have no idea what those things are that's going to make me feel this way, but when I reach my end destination, when I reach where I want to be, then that is how I would be feeling.
Yes. And then I think what you can do to that, to add to that, is to say, and I open myself up to feeling that now. I'm not going to postpone that. I'm opening myself up to practicing those feelings
I
because
love
I
it.
know that that will take me in the right direction. Because I think that one of the things that we're in danger of when, and I've certainly had a couple of clients who had this end goal and they cannot allow themselves to be happy until it's as if that happiness doesn't exist until they reach the end
So it's
goal. And as
reality.
a result, they never reach it because it's always moving further away. And was it Hugh Laurie said this thing? It's a meme that goes around a lot. So the actor Hugh Laurie, he said something like, we're never going to be ready. We're always waiting to be ready,
Yeah.
and we're never going to be ready. So
Okay.
it's now. It's now. So having that vision, having that sense of direction, having that idea that there's a destination on a map that we're working towards, the destination will keep moving, we're walking towards it. It's right, let's feel the joy of that in this life now and let that joy, let that emotion, let that excitement, let that pleasure bring us forward.
And
So
that
it's those
brings us
positive
through the
emotions.
wiggly path back to something we already talked about before.
Yes,
This is why we go and sit in the sunshine with our book. Because when we
yes.
reached our end destination and we are happy and fulfilled and we have all the money in the world, then of course we're going to do whatever we feel like in that moment. If that is sitting in the sunshine with your book, then that is what you're going to be doing.
It is absolutely right. I personally believe we never arrive. I think that when we get close to a goal, so this comes back to how we're motivated.
Mm.
So there's carrot motivation and stick motivation. Lots of people are familiar with that. And the carrot motivation is, well, let's start with stick. Stick motivation is me, is being motivated by moving away from pain. So I cannot bear that thing anymore. I have to move away from it. I can't stand being fat anymore. I have to, be thinner. I can't stand being broke anymore. I have to go and find ways to make money. So your motivation is about moving away from the state you don't want to be in.
Mhm.
And that I think I'm a natural stick person. We
I
tend to
think
be
many people
mostly,
are a natural stick
yeah,
person. I think that
we
the
tend to
stick
be.
situation people have down pat.
Yeah, and it does seem to be kind of almost, in our DNA, but also obviously how we're brought up. Then there's the carrot motivation, and that's where you are drawn by this gleaming vision of what life could be. So you are pulled by pleasure rather than pushed by pain.
Mhm.
Um, and I have taught myself to become much more carrot than stick. And carrot people are proven to be more successful, are proven to live longer, proven to be healthier, because actually they're happier people because they're not constantly trying to run away from pain. They are moving towards a life of pleasure, which they believe is completely possible for them. And stick motivation, tends to be, if we're moving away from pain, it tends to be quite a good way to start taking action. But the problem is that let's take weight, for example. So many people have issues around their weight and fitness. Say you lose 5 or 6 kilos. you work hard and you lose 5, 6 kilos. You're no longer as heavy as you were. You're not feeling as uncomfortable in your clothes as you were. You're no longer in pain to that extent that you were. So you give up. So you stop because your motivation drops. Whereas
Yes.
if your carrot vision is, okay, I've got this wedding coming up next year, and I want to feel amazing at this wedding. It's really important to me that actually I
This is
feel
my
so
dress.
good about that. Yeah. So you're drawn to that vision. And the thing is, as you get closer and closer to your vision, the motivation drops because you're nearly there.
Mm.
Your vision isn't pulling you forward. You've kind of got there,
Mhm.
all but got there. So then your motivation drops. So for carrot people, it's constant. The goal will
True
constantly
vision.
move. It will expand. It will grow. It will change direction. And
Yeah.
it's recognizing that you always need to have something ahead of you that is gleaming, that's delicious, that is fulfilling, and that is challenging, that's exciting. So we
Mhm.
need to become more carrot. And that's something that I've consciously been working on with my mindset training and myself coaching. And it's definitely worked. But I can sense the moments where the bullshit fairy is wanting to drag me back to stick motivation. I'm thinking, no, been there. I don't need to go back there anymore. Um, but you can use stick motivation to help you take action. And then you need to have your carrot goal that helps you to maintain it and to sustain that action. And
Yeah.
so much, habit change training, people um, all the courses that you can do, all the diets you can go on, all the fitness, they don't take into account how people are motivated.
No.
And they clearly don't work because the diet industry, makes billions out of people and people have the same New Year's resolution every year for decades. So
Yes.
clearly the way we've been working doesn't
I
work.
don't do New Year's resolutions. If I want to do a resolution, I'll do it whatever I feel called to do it. Because
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
but
yeah,
I understand what you're saying, and I love this analogy because that is spot on. That's also I use different words, but it comes down to the same thing. And
yeah,
when you are very clear on your big dream, the thing that lights you up, the thing that
yes.
brings this sense of joy, but also sort of like when we were children and it's Christmas and you can see the presents already under the tree,
Mm,
but you're not
mm,
allowed to open them yet. But
mm.
the day of Christmas comes closer and closer, and the day that you get the present comes closer and closer, and you
Yeah.
feel this excitement within yourself because you think, oh, presents, right? I want to know what's in it, and I want to know if I'm going to like it, and I want to know if they bought me what I wanted to get. So you have this state of excitement, and I think that is what the carrot people also feel. This
Yes.
of excitement, this state of looking forward to something that excites
Yes.
you.
Yeah. It's anticipation. It's pleasurable anticipation because there can also be nervous anticipation, but absolutely pleasurable anticipation. And if we can make sure that we deliberately plant those seeds in our lives so that we've always got something to look forward to, we've always got that pleasurable anticipation, it helps with that forward energy. It helps with that, and also the mindful energy of that eyelash thin moment of time, of making it the richest,
Moment.
most meaningful, most the time that matters. So for such a long time, I couldn't articulate what that something more was. I just knew I was supposed to be something more or do something more. And I now understand it was about living a life that matters, a
Mhm.
meaningful life. And in order to do that, you need to be able to define what that looks like for you.
Mhm.
Because I think everybody wants to live a life that matters.
Yes.
And until you can articulate what that means for you, you don't have to know exactly what it looks like, but it's about living on purpose. Um, and I think that certainly in the world of coaching, purpose is a very loaded word. It's not one that I use a great deal
No.
because I think it's quite scary. I spent thousands of pounds. I'm in the UK. I spent thousands of pounds trying
Discovering
to
your purpose.
find my purpose, with various coaches and business trainers and
I
all
can
the
relate
rest
to
of it.
that. Yeah.
And I never found it in anywhere there. Um, I found it in other ways, but it's such a loaded word. So I tend to use the word impact. What's the impact that you want to create? And at various times in your life, that impact might look different, might look slightly different. But if you look at all of those impacts that you have on other people, on the world, on yourself, and you look at those impacts and who you have them on, you'll find there's a golden thread that joins them all up. You'll find there's a theme to the impacts that you have, the positive impacts that you make on the world. And that, I believe, is your purpose. You find the theme of your purpose through what brings you the most joy and what has the most positive effect on what's outside of you. I think that's really how you arrive at your purpose. But it is something that so many of us feel the need for in this time. Um, and there's so much talk about it that you think, oh gosh, suppose I haven't got one. Suppose I'm the weird person that doesn't have a purpose.
And that's also how they portray it. There is one purpose, and you need to
Yeah,
find the one purpose. And
yeah,
I work a lot with human design and the gene keys, and depending on what line your profile is,
yes.
I discovered that for me, my purpose keeps changing. Because
Uh-huh.
I am a sixth line, and I need to go through the first line, the second line, third line, fourth line, fifth line to end up in the sixth line. And every
Sure.
single line has a different type of purpose. And
Yeah.
it is my purpose to have my purpose change constantly.
Yes.
Be okay
Yes.
with that, and to just follow the internal wisdom wherever it takes me, and to
Yeah.
relax into it. But if you believe everybody that says you need to have one purpose, then if you go for the one purpose and you try to figure it out, then that can lead to affirmation of the bullshit rules, the rules that I work with. Um,
Absolutely.
I'm failing. I'm not good enough. I'm not doing the right thing. Everybody has
Yeah.
a purpose, and I cannot find mine, and that must mean that
Yes.
I'm fill in
Yes.
after the thing, right? And that's also keeping you stuck.
Of course it is. And I think it's one of the biggest problems people come to me with. Low self-worth is a key one, perfectionism, but this idea of what am I for? What's my something or what's my purpose? And the questions are, what if I don't have one? What if I'm that weird person that doesn't have one? What if I get it wrong and I
Yeah.
choose the wrong one? What if my purpose changes? Does that mean I'm a phony? I'm a fraud and never had a purpose in the first place? So I just say to people, forget purpose and try and think of the impact that you want to make right now in your life and outside of your life. What's the difference you want to make? Um,
Yes.
and then just do that thing. And actually, naturally, there will be themes to the impact that we have. There will be themes that reflect our own gifts and who we are. But it doesn't stay fixed because we don't. We do this work
Oh,
and we evolve and we grow and we expand and we become limitless
yes.
if that's where we want to go. How can you stick to one tiny little thing? If that's what's happening, if you're growing and expanding. Thematically, it might grow and expand too. But I do believe, we are called to live meaningful lives, to live lives that matter.
Yes.
And that involves simply leaving the world a better place than we arrived in,
Yes.
um, through our actions and through our presence and
Yes.
through our intentions. Um, and it's been a hell of a journey.
Sure, but it's also still very rewarding because the more you understand yourself and the way yourself works, but the world works and how you work within the world, the
Yeah.
more inner peace I'm starting to feel within myself, the
Yes.
more I am able to just be.
Yes.
This is maybe the biggest problem I see with people. People don't know how to just be. They cannot
Yeah.
give themselves permission to just be. They don't know how to just be. They feel
Yeah.
I always need to do instead of
Mhm. It's true. And I think that comes down to lack of self-acceptance. Um, and certainly I was very guilty of that. I didn't know how to accept myself. I was always thinking there had to be that something more. Um, and consciously learning how to accept yourself. And that doesn't mean you're perfect, far from it. It just means you stop fighting the fact of who you are
yes.
and you start working with who you are and exploring who you are rather than resisting that and feeling not good enough.
Yes.
And certainly, my big aha moment came when I was nearly 50 when this happened. So I'm 63 now. So I spent these decades with that feeling of there's got to be something more, and feeling not good enough because I didn't know what that was and I wasn't doing it,
Hmm.
that I wasn't living purposefully. Um, and then I had this event that happened on a train. I was on my way back from I had a contract that was 2 hours commute each way. So it was exhausting.
Yeah.
I was menopausal, premenopausal. So that was exhausting too. And it was my birthday. It was mid-October. I was late back. My cousin was giving me a birthday dinner party, and I was late to my own party. I was in the front carriage of a very crowded commuter train, and we ran over somebody on the track.
Oh.
Because I was in the first carriage, this person died under the wheels I was sitting on top of. And we then had 3 hours in this crowded train before we could get off. So, of course, I missed my party, but that was the least of my worries. Everyone on the train was all standing up, it's crowded, and people were grumbling and
Mhm.
saying how selfish it was for this person to lie
Yeah.
down on the track at rush hour commuter time. And I was listening to all this grumbling, and I just could feel this rage building up and building up and building up. And I just suddenly shouted, shut up, shut up. Somebody is never going home. But they may not have had a home. If there's anybody out there that loves them, they will never know what happened and why this happened. And they will never see them again. So I'm
Mhm.
sorry if you're late for dinner, but just shut up and think about that.
Yes.
And it was just like everyone in the carriage went, whoops. And then we
Hmm.
were there for another 2 hours. I sat on that train and I thought, right now, this is now I have to choose how I
Hmm.
go forward. I have to find my something more.
Yes.
And, I realized that was a must, but it was an imperative. I can no longer just keep putting one foot in front of the other and trying lots of different things and having this feeling, this itch, this knowing that there's something out there. So I set myself what I now understand is called a transderivational search. And that's a psychotherapy term and also a computing term. And it's basically a transderivational search, horrible language,
Mm.
is where you seed your mind or a computer with information that is relevant to what you want to get out of it. So you've got a challenge, you've got a question you want answer to, you've got a challenge you want to find out what that thing is. So you
Mhm.
start putting in specific information. So my information, and I didn't realize this is what I was doing, was okay, it has to be something I can do with silver hair because I don't have much pension. It has to be something I can do when I'm older, where wisdom is an advantage. Okay. Has to be something I can do in English because my other languages aren't good enough. It has to be something I can do around writing. It has to be something I can do from anywhere in the world. It has to be something that makes a difference to other people, that is a positive difference, because the job I was doing at the time didn't have that impact.
Mhm.
So I ended up with half a dozen things of it has to be this or it must not be that.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's the input. And then what happens is, and I teach people how to do this, and I call it brain mining because we are
Mhm.
mining our brains for the gold that's in there. And we have these wonderful imaginations and this rich unconscious, ability to process information unconsciously by inputting those very specific things. And I was recognizing I don't know what the answer is, but it must be this and it mustn't be this.
Mhm.
These are the parameters. I was seeding my mind with the information it needed to mine, to go mining for this gold. And after that, I made some changes. The next day, I contacted my boss and I said, I've never ever done this before. It's pull out of a contract, but I'm giving my notice on this contract. Um, and she listened to what I had to say. And then she did a wonderful thing. She said, how about if you just write copy for us and you do it from home?
Huh?
Perfect. So I still had some money coming in. I didn't have 4 hours a day of commuting. I
Yes.
wasn't letting them down too much. And it gave me the space and the time and the income to allow this. And at first, I was chasing different things. I was thinking, could it be that? Could it be that? Oh, yeah. While I was on the train, I said, it must not be therapy
Mhm.
because I was always the unofficial therapist in my friendship group, and it used to, sensitive people and being a therapist is you need to learn how to protect yourself, and I didn't know how to do that. So I would
Yeah.
take on everyone else's pain. So I said, it cannot be that. I'll be dead in 2 years. Um, and I was trying, is it this? Is it that? And I thought, no, I've done that before. No, it's not, that's not. And eventually I gave myself permission to just switch off all of that searching, conscious searching, and let my
Mhm.
brain do its job. And every so often an idea would pop up, and I think, oh, that's interesting. And I'd journal it. And then that was in mid-October. And then early January, my mother had a breakdown, a very serious one, and was in hospital. And I had to drop everything and go up. And I was thinking, oh my God, no, this is me kind of being a therapist child. I wasn't a therapist, but this is me giving my mother therapy, and it's my mother. So it
Mhm.
felt like this hugely loaded, difficult situation. But something interesting happened because a few years previously, I stopped trying to be the therapist in my friendship group. All
Mhm.
my friends would come to me with their problems. I always had someone living in my house that was bipolar or, you know, psychotic or having problems or having money problems. I just decided I had to stop doing that because all of my energy was going into trying to make other people better when I didn't have the skills or the resources to do that for myself even. So I'd spent a few years not doing that. And then when my mother had her breakdown, I was thinking, oh no, it's going back to that. That's going to damage me. But the opposite happened. And in those few years when I'd not been draining myself trying to fix other people, I'd grown some of the skin that you need to protect yourself, the emotional, spiritual skin. And when I looked after my mother for a couple of weeks, not only did it not drain me, but I found it energizing that I was the only person that could reach her, that
Yeah.
my presence calmed her, that I
Mhm.
seemed to know instinctively what to ask her or to say to her or how to soothe her. And after a couple of weeks, I had to go back down to London because I was doing a screenwriting thing. And I just thought, well, I'll just buy a book on CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, because she was going to have that. And I wanted to be able to talk to her carers in a, reasonably educated way. So I bought this book and it happened that the book I bought on Amazon, the one that attracted me was by a guy called Avi Joseph. And he was somebody I went to see, a hypnotherapist I'd been to see in London about 10 years before. So I
Ah.
thought, oh, I wonder if that's him. And I Googled him and it was him. So I bought his book. And when I Googled him, I discovered he'd set up a college for training people to do cognitive behavioral hypnotherapy. And I just thought, oh, that's interesting. I thought no more about it. I just bought the
Mhm.
book. I thought, oh, that's interesting. What's happened to Abby? And I woke up the next morning on fire, knowing I was going to go to Avi's college, knowing I was going to train to become a cognitive behavioral hypnotherapist, which was so not what I had envisioned for myself.
Yeah.
And the second I made that decision, the excitement just huge for me. I started training 2 months later, graduated 2 years later, and the itch went away. The itch I've had all my life of,
Awesome.
I know I was born for something more. What is it? What is it? It went away. So my something more turned out to be training as a therapist so that I could
Yeah.
legitimately help other people
Uh,
to transform their mindsets and to
Despite
overcome their
you said on the
difficulties.
train, it should not be therapy.
Yeah, I did. I did. But what happened was our brains need evidence. And the evidence I got
Yeah.
was that I spent 2 weeks with my mother, who was on suicide watch. She was very seriously mentally, emotionally ill.
Hmm.
And I spent 2 weeks with her and I survived it. Not only did I survive it, but I was energized by the
Hmm.
difference I could make for her. So that was almost the last piece in the puzzle. And then when I bought Avi's book, when I went online and I got out of the car and I went up and straight away I bought this book, that was the last piece of information my mind needed. That was the how. So the why was right. I know that I can help people, that my presence can help people who are in a state of distress.
Yeah.
That was the kind of why. And it makes the difference. And the how was when I was drawn to this book because of the image on the cover, which was a dandelion, seeded dandelion head.
Mm.
And then I realized it was by this person, and I saw he'd set up a college, and that was it. So I woke up and it was 6:16 the next morning, and I was on fire, and I knew what I was going to be when I grew up.
Yeah.
And since then, I have never for 1 second had any hesitation, had any doubt, because my mind took all of the pieces of information I'd fed in,
Hmm.
found all of the evidence it needed, and then presented me with something I could not argue with.
Yes.
And the excitement that came from that knowing was unbelievable.
Yes.
And then, of course, I realized that I didn't want to be a therapist for highly anxious and depressed people all my life.
Hmm.
But what I wanted to do was work with people once they have managed to get past their depression and anxiety, and that excitement for life and living comes back in. So
Yes.
those are the people that I work with now. It's people who've moved beyond that place of great pain and are now excited and interested and want to become there something more.
Yeah.
But I could not have done that without going through this whole process.
No. No. I love that. Oh, this is such a wonderful talk, Caroline. I've been really enjoying our talk, and I think you have a wonderful story and you tell it so well.
Oh, bless you. Thank you.
And I would also like to ask you, listener, viewer, watcher out there, if you've been following our conversation, I would love to hear from you. What was your number one insight out of our talk today? Or maybe you want to share a similar experience that you had in the comments, or maybe you have a question, something that popped up and that you don't know how to deal with, or that you would like an answer to. We would love it if you could put those in the comments below this video. I'll promise to answer every single one of you. I can also imagine that you think, oh, I need to, I need a Caroline. I need her. So where can people find you? How can people connect with you?
Well, my passion for the last over a year and a half now, actually. I've never been great at consistently showing up for things, but my absolute passion is writing on Substack. So Substack is a newsletter platform, and I write every week. I write an article about some aspect of mindset, exploring a life that matters. Living in this meaningful way, developing, building that number one core skill of self-awareness, so that we can challenge and change what's going on with the bullshit fairy. So there's a Substack, and my Substack is called Something More. And you'll find it on, if you Google Substack, and I think you've got the link to it, Barbara,
I'll
but
make
it's
sure that the link is
it's
included in the show notes. Yes.
yeah, Caroline Ferguson on Substack. So that would be the way to get in touch with me, is by messaging me through Substack, or leaving a comment below the video. I'm hoping I'll be able to have a look at the comments and to answer anything that comes up.
If
Um,
something comes that's directed at you, I'll make sure that you're aware of the question. So we'll
Thank you.
definitely answer everything. And Caroline, the link that she just shared or that she just spoke about will be included in the show notes of this episode, as well as my own links if you want to reach out to me. So don't worry about it. Just find where there's some text around this video, and they will be in there. And yeah, thank you for this wonderful, illuminating conversation. I've deeply enjoyed it.
So have I, and it's been as wiggly a conversation as the experiences that led to it. Um,
Perfect title.
Thank you so much, Barbara.
Thank you also for being here, Caroline. And of course, thank you, watcher, listener, viewer, supporter of this channel, for always tuning into the conversations that I'm having with wonderful guests like Caroline. If you are new here, I would have appreciated if you would subscribe to the channel so that you will never miss another video like this one again. And if you found this to be helpful, inspirational, then we would love it if you would share it with your following, your audience, because you never know who needs to hear this message that you have within your followers. And for today, I think the only thing left to say is just have an amazing rest of your day. And I look forward to inspiring you with another beautiful guest in next week's episode.
Thank you.